Hi, I'm Peter Cowan, the Bee Whisperer. Did you have a mentor when you first started keeping bees, or do you have one right now that helped you out with your problems? I've been very fortunate in that when I started off beekeeping as an 11 or 12-year-old, I had a mentor, Mr. Jennings, who was helping me with getting my Boy Scout merit badge for beekeeping. And he came along and helped me with problems and that sort of thing I had. He taught me a lot about bees, although I'd been reading an awful lot and I'd intended to sort of go into it sort of on my own anyway. It was very, very useful having someone who really knew the bees and was really calm and explained things to me as I was looking in the hive. So I probably only saw Mr. Jennings half a dozen times during my first year or so keeping bees. After that, it was the occasional phone call. But he's had 50 years later, he had a lifelong impression on my life. I've been very fortunate also that when I moved back to the USA from the UK, 2003, I got a new mentor for my beekeeping. It was Harold Swan, who's also known as the grandfather of beekeeping in Maine. And he had decades of experience, which he was very, very happy to share. If anyone who stopped by Harold's shop would have known, you had to budget a couple of extra hours to talk bees with Harold. And I was very happy to oblige him in that regard, and I learned a lot about beekeeping, historical beekeeping, and the current day-to-day issues with beekeeping, or at least how Harold saw them. And of course, since that time, I've seen a lot of things which I now do quite differently from what Harold was doing, but it's an evolutionary process. Mentors don't pretend to know everything. They just can show you what they know, and it's such a useful way of learning your beekeeping. But on a parallel track, this Saturday, Amy and I were doing our Facebook Live video, and we were talking about the things that we loved about beekeeping, and it really drove home to me. The thing I really love now about beekeeping, I mean, let's say maybe I take a step back. The thing I really loved about beekeeping when I first got started was just the absolute joy of being amongst all those bees and being amongst the super-organism and everything working together in beautiful weather and blossoming apple trees, seeing the bees interacting with nature all around and you being part of it and being able to have the honor of being there and watching it and helping that along by giving them space and a home and that sort of thing. And the joy of that never leaves you. But now probably one of the biggest thrills I get out of beekeeping is actually seeing that day occur for other beekeepers. Seeing a new beekeeper opening up a hive and having that eye-opening, that just amazing experience of being amongst the bees for the first time, or it wasn't my first time when I really had that feeling. I was a little scared to start with, but after a week or two, then things really started to go. And I had this is a time I can remember was after about a year or so, I was just had that unbelievably peaceful moment being there amongst the bees. And occasionally you have the privilege of being there with a new beekeeper who's actually going through that experience. It's sort of a life-changing experience of just being part of the beehive and the bee colony or your apiary. And so this is something I've found now gives me the biggest thrill in beekeeping these days. 50 years on since I started my first hives, I love just sharing it with other people. I love to be there with them in the bee yard when that's happening, but also get a bit of that kick from these videos, from talking to them at our beekeeping club, or having talking at other beekeeping clubs, or or the Facebook Live, and I'm sure with this Beekeeping 24/7, I'm going to have a lot more of that on a day-to-day basis in terms of effectively mentoring dozens and dozens of people. So it's that sharing of beekeeping is really something, if you haven't done it yet, it's something you really want to look forward to. And I mean, sharing it with your own kids, I've done that. Sometimes the kids are thrilled to do it. Sometimes the kids would rather be doing something else. I had the joy this year of showing in the beehives my grandson, Oliver. And we spent half an hour going into the beehives and opening up the combs and having a look for the queen bee. And Oliver's particularly interested in seeing honey and having some honey because he just loves honey, and Grandpa always makes honey for him, but the bees are making the honey just for Oliver. Right. Do you want to hold it?
Yes. Can I eat some honey from the honey?
You put the hand there. Yep. You help me hold the honeycomb.
Hold it up.
So you put one hand here. That's it. This one over here. And I'll hold that one there.
Yeah. Oh, can you
look at Mummy and smile.
Look at me.
Cheese.
There.
And look at the camera that Daddy's holding. Where's the camera Daddy's holding?
Right there.
Yeah. I say.
I have to taste some.
We will taste some honey, buddy.
Yeah.
We're just
you want to taste that
first.
honey, don't you? And so there's so much you can do about sharing your beekeeping with a 3-year-old, but you get this same sort of thrill sharing it with an adult as well. And whilst it's extra special teaching your grandkids something like this, you can be sharing these experiences with friends, and I've done that on many occasions, and they get. It gives me as much of a kick as it gives them, I'm sure. Because sharing it with an adult, you're starting to see then them go through that same sort of Zen experience I had 50 years ago. And you're seeing the realization, well, this is something I just want to do more of. Because it really is kind of like a life-changing experience being amongst the bees when that happens. And you realize how amazing this really is. Then the obstacles for them starting off, once you've got hooked like that, then the obstacles are just having someone to share it with in terms of asking questions and that sort of thing. And like my first mentor, I literally only saw him about 6, maybe a few more times, maybe a little bit the following year. But it was just having someone to knock the ideas around with, because once you're into the bees, you really want to learn. But if you don't have if you don't feel like you're ready to be like a mentor, I'd still suggest that you share it with somebody. If you've got a friend that's interested in doing it, you're sort of learning as equals, or but believe it or not, the fact that you might have already had a year's experience is enormously different for somebody just getting into beekeeping to be able to do it with someone who's done it for a year. I mean, you're still full of questions, but you know way more than the other person does. And what you find the benefit of is having someone try and knock the ideas around with, but also it's just sharing the experience and say, wasn't it cool when we saw this and that? And it's not just in the moment working with the bees, but subsequent to that, and digesting what you've done, and it just builds and builds on that experience. So one thing I'd suggest is, if you've only got one bee suit, treat yourself to that new bee suit you fancied getting. Now you've got a spare one to let a friend use, and you can take friends or family or guests into your bee yard to see beekeeping firsthand. So treat yourself to that new bee suit and lend the other one to a friend. It doesn't have to fit well, as long as you can cover their face and hands. They're going to have a great time. They'll be safe. I don't think I got stung in my first 4 years of beekeeping as a kid, and that's despite only being a kid doing it. So you needn't worry about the stinging aspect of it either. Another thing you can do about to get that thrill of bringing more people into beekeeping and seeing some of the excitement and the thrill and fascination of beekeeping is give talks at schools. Often you'll be asked to give talks. If you know about beekeeping, people want to hear about your experiences with beekeeping, and you make a little slideshow out of the pictures that you're going to be taking all the time. It's very easy to talk about something that you love and find so fascinating. You could get involved with the local school if they could form a beekeeping club. You can help them with that. There's so many different ways that you can still be involved with beekeeping and get that thrill of being, in effect, a mentor to other people. So what you should try to do is, if you've had a mentor, try to pay it forward, become a mentor yourself. Being a mentor in beekeeping has benefits that you just really haven't appreciated yet, in terms of the thrill it gives you to see that joy that you found in beekeeping appear on someone else's face. And 50 years from now, they might be talking to friends about the help they had from you when they first started beekeeping. So the pay it forward now, and the memory will live on. I'm Peter Cowan, the Bee Whisperer. See you next time.